The morning mist clung to the pristine grounds of Willowbrook Equestrian Center as Marcus Chun pushed his cart between the immaculate stables. Each stall housed horses worth more than most people earned in a year, their coats gleaming under the soft stable lights. The familiar scent of hay and leather filled his lungs as he methodically cleaned each area, his movements efficient and respectful around the magnificent animals. A gentle nicker drew his attention to the corner stall where Thunder, a temperamental black stallion, stood pawing restlessly at the ground. Marcus paused, noting the slight favor the horse showed his left hind leg and the tension in his neck. He reached slowly through the bars, letting Thunder catch a scent before gently stroking the animal's nose. The sound of expensive heels clicking against concrete announced the arrival of Victoria Ashford, the center CEO. She swept past without acknowledgement, her designer riding boots and immaculate jacket a stark contrast to Marcus's worn coveralls. Behind her trailed Jonathan Hayes, the head trainer, his condescending smile already forming as his gaze fell upon the janitor. Victoria's sharp voice cut through the morning quiet as she gestured toward Thunder's stall. "The horse has been impossible lately," she declared, her frustration evident. "3 of our best riders have failed to make any progress with him." Jonathan Hayes adjusted his expensive riding gloves with theatrical precision, his voice dripping with disdain as he addressed Marcus. "Make sure you don't get too close to the horses while cleaning," he said loudly enough for nearby staff to hear. "We can't have the help spooking our million-dollar animals with their inexperience." Marcus continued his work without response, but his jaw tightened slightly. He had learned long ago that silence was often the wisest defense against such cruelty. Behind him, elderly stable hand Walter Morrison shook his head disapprovingly at Jonathan's behavior. The afternoon brought Marcus's greatest joy when 80-year-old Emma Chun arrived after school, her backpack bouncing as she ran toward the stables. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the horses, pressing her small face against the stall doors with wonder. "Daddy, why can't I ride like those other kids?" she asked, watching his privileged children receive their private lessons. Marcus knelt beside his daughter, his calloused hands gentle on her shoulders. "Someday, sweetheart," he promised quietly, though they both knew riding lessons cost more than their monthly rent. Walter approached them slowly, his weathered face kind. "That little one has a natural way with the horses," he told Marcus in a low voice. "Just like her father, I'd wager." There was knowing in the old man's eyes that made Marcus uncomfortable. The trailer's arrival created a stir throughout Willowbrook as handlers unloaded Midnight Storm, a massive bay stallion whose reputation preceded him. The horse's eyes rolled white with agitation, his powerful body trembling with barely contained energy as he was led into the specially reinforced stall. Victoria stood at a safe distance, her arms crossed as she watched her top riders attempt to assess the new arrival. Each approach was met with bared teeth and striking hooves. Even Jonathan maintained his distance, though his voice remained authoritative as he barked instructions to the increasingly nervous staff. "The horse is clearly traumatized," announced Dr. Sarah Fleming, the facility's veterinarian, after completing her examination from outside the stall. "He'll need weeks of careful conditioning before anyone attempts to ride him." Marcus moved quietly through his cleaning routine, but as experienced, I cataloged every detail of the stallion's behavior. The slight tremor in the horse's left ear, the way he favored his right side when turning, the pattern of his breathing that spoke of deep anxiety rather than aggression. When he paused near the stall with his mop bucket, Midnight Storm's frantic pacing slowed. Marcus whispered soft, wordless sounds under his breath, the same gentle tones he had once used in rodeo arenas across 3 states. The horse's ears pricked forward with curiosity, a moment of calm breaking through his fear. That evening in their small apartment above the local diner, Emma spread her homework across the kitchen table while Marcus prepared their simple dinner. The walls were bare except for a single faded photograph tucked behind the refrigerator, showing a younger Marcus astride a bucking bronco, championship buckle gleaming at his waist. Emma looked up from her math worksheet, her voice wistful. Mrs. Patterson said her daughter is getting a new horse for her birthday. Do you think I'll ever have one, Daddy? Marcus sat beside his daughter, his heart aching at the innocent hope in her eyes. His wife's medical bills had consumed everything, including the prize money that once made him the youngest rider to win the National Finals Rodeo 3 consecutive years. He had traded his championship dreams for steady work the day the doctors delivered their devastating diagnosis. "You know what, sweetheart," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes the most important things in life aren't the ones we own, but the moments we share." His voice carried the weight of sacrifice and love that only a parent could understand. Back at Willowbrook, Midnight Storm's situation grew more desperate. 2 more professional riders had attempted contact, resulting in a kicked stall door and a trainer requiring medical attention. Victoria's frustration mounted as word spread about the facility's inability to handle their newest acquisition. The arrival of the Pemberton family's private jet at the nearby airfield sent Willowbrook's staff into overdrive. Richard Pemberton, oil magnate and potential major investor, was bringing his daughter to evaluate the facility for her Olympic training program. The visit could secure Willowbrook's financial future or destroy its reputation entirely. Victoria paced the main arena in her finest suit, her usual composure cracking as she watched Jonathan struggle with basic training exercises on their gentlest Morris. Midnight Storm's presence had rattled the entire staff, creating an atmosphere of tension that permeated every aspect of their operations. Marcus quietly mopped the viewing area, invisible to the gathering crowd of wealthy patrons and riding instructors. He noticed how the horses sensed the collective anxiety, their ears pinned back and movements jerky with stress. When the Pembertons arrived in their black limousine, their expectations were immediately apparent. "This facility comes highly recommended," Richard announced loudly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to getting exactly what he paid for. Jonathan's demonstration began poorly and deteriorated rapidly. His mount, usually reliable, shied at shadows and refused simple jumps. The watching crowd murmured disapprovingly as the trainer's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. From Midnight Storm's stall came the sound of splintering wood as the stallion's agitation reached a breaking point, his powerful kicks threatening to destroy the reinforced barriers. The demonstration reached its humiliating climax when Jonathan's horse bolted toward the stable entrance, nearly colliding with young Pemberton heir Catherine. The girl's scream echoed through the arena as her father's face darkened with fury and protective rage. Victoria rushed to smooth over the disaster, her voice strained with desperation. "I assure you this is highly unusual," she began, but Richard Pemberton was already signaling his driver. The sound of Midnight Storm's increasingly violent thrashing drew everyone's attention to the stable area. The stallion's fear and aggression had reached dangerous levels, his powerful body throwing itself against the reinforced stall with enough force to shake the entire structure. "We should call animal control," suggested Dr. Fleming urgently. "He's becoming a danger to himself and everyone here." Victoria's composure finally cracked completely as she faced the collapse of everything she had built. In her frustration and desperation, she threw her hands up and declared to no one in particular, at this point, if anyone in this entire facility could actually ride that horse, I'd marry them on the spot. The comment was meant as bitter sarcasm, but it hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus, still holding his mop in the corner of the arena, felt every eye in the building suddenly turn toward the source of the increasingly desperate sounds from Midnight Storm's stall. Marcus set down his mop with deliberate care, his hands trembling slightly as memories flooded back. The weight of championship buckles, the roar of crowds, the perfect harmony between rider and horse that had once defined his entire existence. He had buried that part of himself so completely that sometimes he forgot it had ever existed. Emma's voice echoed in his memory from their conversation the night before. "Sometimes I dream about riding, Daddy. Do you think dreams can come true?" Her innocent faith in possibilities had stirred something deep within him that no amount of practical resignation could entirely suppress. Walter Morrison appeared at his elbow, his weathered face grave with understanding. "That horse needs someone who speaks his language," the old stable hand whispered. "Someone who knows what it means to be broken and still find the strength to stand." The sound of approaching sirens made the decision for him. If Midnight Storm injured someone seriously or had to be destroyed, Marcus would carry that guilt forever. He thought of his late wife, how she had always encouraged him to use his gifts to help others, even when it cost them everything. Taking a deep breath that tasted of sawdust and old dreams, Marcus stepped forward into the center of the arena. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the sudden hush. "I'll try to calm the horse down," he said simply, his words causing a ripple of shocked murmurs through the assembled crowd. The arena fell into stunned silence, broken only by nervous laughter from the watching crowd. Jonathan's voice cut through the air with sharp mockery. "The janitor thinks he can handle what trained professionals cannot? This is absolutely ridiculous." Richard Pemberton's eyebrows rose with barely concealed amusement as he leaned against the arena fence. "Well, this should be entertaining," he drawled to his daughter. "Perhaps we'll witness the shortest riding demonstration in equestrian history." Victoria stared at Marcus with a mixture of desperation and disbelief. "You do understand that horse has injured 3 people already?" Her voice carried the weight of legal liability and genuine concern for his safety. Marcus nodded quietly, his calloused hands already moving to remove his work gloves. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable as his shoulders straightened and his movements gained the fluid confidence of someone who had spent years in the saddle under the most dangerous conditions. Walter Morrison stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "That stallion's been hurt before, son. He's fighting ghosts as much as he's fighting us. You'll need to show him you understand that kind of pain." From Midnight Storm's stall came another thunderous crash as the animal's panic reached new heights. Time was running out, and Marcus knew that hesitation would be fatal for both himself and the magnificent creature whose fear filled the stable with the sound of splintering wood and desperate breathing. Marcus approached Midnight Storm's stall with the measured pace of someone who understood that every movement mattered. The crowd's chatter faded to whispers as they witnessed something unexpected in the janitor's bearing, a quiet authority that seemed to emerge from somewhere deep within his soul. The stallion's wild eyes fixed on Marcus through the bars, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of someone fundamentally different from the others who had tried to dominate him. Marcus stopped just outside striking distance, his voice dropping to a low, rhythmic murmur that carried tones of understanding rather than command. "Easy now, big fellow," he whispered, his hands visible and still. "I know what it's like to lose everything that mattered." The horse's ears twitched forward, his frantic pacing slowing as something in Marcus's voice reached past his fear and fury. Walter Morrison nodded approvingly from the sidelines, recognizing the ancient language between broken souls seeking healing. The old stable hand had seen this kind of communication only a handful of times in his 40 years around horses, always between riders who had suffered and survived. Victoria held her breath as Midnight Storm's violent thrashing gradually subsided. The stallion remained alert and wary, but for the first time since his arrival, he stood relatively still, his magnificent head turned toward the quiet man who spoke to him as one wounded creature to another. With infinite patience, Marcus slowly opened the stall door, his movements telegraphed clearly to the watching stallion. Midnight Storm tensed but did not retreat, his dark eyes following every gesture with intelligent wariness. The assembled crowd held its collective breath as the janitor stepped inside the enclosure with the 1,000-pound animal that had terrorized trained professionals. Marcus extended his hand palm up, allowing the horse to investigate his scent while maintaining the soft, wordless sounds that seemed to speak directly to the animal's wounded spirit. When Midnight Storm finally touched his nose to Marcus's palm, a ripple of amazement passed through the watching crowd. The transformation in both man and horse was remarkable to witness. Marcus's years of championship-level expertise emerged naturally as he moved around the stallion, his hands reading the animal's tension and responding with the perfect pressure and placement that only experience could teach. Jonathan's mocking laughter died in his throat as he watched the janitor accomplish in minutes what the facility's best trainers had failed to achieve in days. The horse's breathing slowed to normal rhythm, his ears forward with curiosity rather than pinned back in aggression. Richard Pemberton straightened against the fence, his businessman's instincts recognizing something extraordinary unfolding before his eyes. "This is not the work of an amateur," he murmured to his daughter, his voice carrying new respect and growing intrigue. Without saddle or bridle, Marcus placed his hands on Midnight Storm's withers and vaulted onto the stallion's back in one fluid motion that spoke of countless hours in rodeo arenas. The horse barely flinched, as if recognizing the touch of someone who belonged there. What followed defied every expectation. Marcus guided the powerful animal with subtle shifts of weight and gentle pressure from his legs, demonstrating a level of horsemanship that transformed the watching crowd's skepticism into awe. Horse and rider moved as one entity, their connection so profound it seemed almost mystical. The stallion responded to Marcus's silent commands with eager cooperation, executing precise movements that showcased both his intelligence and his rider's extraordinary skill. Around the arena, they flowed like water, each transition seamless and beautiful to witness. Jonathan's face had gone pale as he realized he was watching a master at work. "This is impossible," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of hoofbeats on arena sand. Victoria pressed against the fence, her business concerns forgotten as she witnessed something that transcended mere riding technique. The janitor she had barely noticed was revealing himself to be one of the most gifted horsemen she had ever encountered. Richard Pemberton pulled out his phone, already mentally calculating the value of securing such talent for his daughter's Olympic aspirations. "Young man," he called out urgently, "we need to talk about your background immediately." As Marcus dismounted, the arena erupted in spontaneous applause. Midnight Storm nuzzled his shoulder affectionately, the transformation from dangerous stallion to gentle companion complete. The truth emerged in fragments as Walter Morrison stepped forward with memories of Marcus Chun, three-time national finals rodeo champion who had vanished from competition 5 years earlier. Victoria approached with genuine humility, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by deep respect. "I believe I owe you an apology and much more," she said quietly. "We would be honored to have you join our training staff as head instructor." Richard Pemberton's offer was immediate and generous. "My daughter needs a trainer of your caliber for her Olympic preparation. Name your price." The businessman's recognition of true talent was both swift and sincere. Marcus looked toward the stable entrance where Emma had arrived after school, her eyes wide with wonder at seeing her father atop the magnificent horse. The pride and joy on her face made every sacrifice worthwhile. Within weeks, their lives transformed completely. Emma began her own riding lessons, her natural ability blossoming under her father's expert guidance. Marcus found himself not just employed but celebrated, his quiet dignity finally matched by the recognition he had always deserved. Have you ever witnessed someone's hidden talents shine when given the chance? Share your story in the comments below and let us know what part of this journey touched your heart most deeply.